One minute, you're sipping your espresso on a quiet Sicilian morning. The next, the earth beneath your feet has cracked open, tilted your home sideways, and carved a cliff where your backyard used to be. That's exactly what just happened in Niscemi, a hilltop town in southern Italy that's now quite literally falling apart. A catastrophic landslide just hit Niscemi in the province of Caltanissetta, Sicily, displacing thousands of people and turning entire neighborhoods into geological crime scenes. And no, this wasn't an earthquake. Seismographs. Totally quiet.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
What actually happened was far more insidious. The land itself gave up after days of relentless Mediterranean rainfall. This wasn't a sudden collapse, it was a slow, creeping, wet disaster. The kind that doesn't shake buildings but quietly pulls them apart. So, what went wrong? Start with the rain. A powerful storm system dumped extreme, sustained rainfall over the region for several days. Not a passing shower, not even a heavy downpour. This was the kind of relentless weather that soaks deep into the ground, layer by layer. And in Niscemi, that ground is made of clay-rich soils and soft sedimentary rock, basically geological sponge cake. When these kinds of soils get waterlogged, they don't hold it together. Literally, they lose their strength, their structure collapses, and gravity takes over. As water infiltrated the already fragile slopes, poor water pressure built up. At a certain point, the balance tipped. The slope could no longer hold itself up, and what followed was a deep-seated landslide, not a mudslide, not a surface scrape, but a slow-moving, deep structural failure. The ground beneath entire blocks started to shift millimeter by millimeter, hour by hour. And here's the terrifying part. This kind of landslide doesn't need speed to destroy. It just needs time. Roads fractured, windows cracked, buildings tilted like they were caught mid-swoon. Doors wouldn't open. Foundations split apart. From the air, you could see a rupture zone stretching kilometers. Entire sections of the town now perched on the edges of cliffs that didn't exist a week ago. Utility poles, hanging over voids. Streets, snapped in half. Infrastructure that took decades to build was gone in a matter of days, not with a bang, but with a slow, silent grind. And while some residents were watching the news, others were watching their homes quietly collapse in real time. The Italian civil protection authorities jumped in fast. As the ground kept shifting, they expanded exclusion zones and carried out emergency evacuations. Thousands of people had to leave, many with nothing but what they could carry. Schools shut down. Roads became useless. Temporary shelters filled up. And all of it happened while the town was still actively moving. This wasn't a post-disaster response. It was a live, unfolding crisis. Engineers now say that stabilization might not even be possible. Not with this kind of deep clay-based slope movement. Once the earth has mobilized like this, the internal structure is compromised for good. Traditional interventions like retaining walls, drainage systems, or slope reinforcement won't cut it. For many homes, the damage is permanent. There's no going back. And here's where things go from tragic to systemic. This wasn't just a random geological fluke. It's a sign of what's coming. Scientists say this is exactly the kind of disaster we should expect more of as climate change ramps up. Extreme rainfall, especially high-volume, short-duration events, are becoming more frequent. And they're hitting places that were already sitting on the edge. Southern Italy is one of those places. The region's underlying geology is made of ancient marine clays and weak sediment layers that just don't cope well with water. They absorb it, swell, lose strength, and then collapse under their own weight. And when storms bring more rain than the terrain can handle, the hills start to move. Not all at once, but enough to destroy everything on top of them. The difference between a shallow mudslide and a deep-seated landslide like this is huge. Mudslides are fast and loud. This is slower, quieter, and way more destructive in the long run. Buildings don't get wiped away in seconds, they degrade inch by inch. Cracks widen, floors tilt, walls split. It's a slow-motion demolition that doesn't stop when the rain does, and that makes managing it way more complicated. You can't just rebuild. You can't even say when it's safe to go back, because the ground doesn't stop moving just because the weather clears. The internal stress patterns in the slope have changed. The water flow paths have shifted. The slope's memory has been reset. And if another storm hits, whether it's in a month or a year, it could all reactivate. Right now, scientists and engineers are monitoring everything in real time. GPS sensors are tracking movement down to the millimeter. Drones are mapping the terrain from the sky. Rain gauges are measuring every drop. It's an all-hands-on-deck approach, but it's still not enough to stop the Earth from moving. It just gives them a better picture of how bad.
If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your feedback helps shape what we cover next, and you being here keeps the conversation going. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
It's getting. And while that's impressive, the bigger issue is this: most communities in high-risk Mediterranean zones don't have this kind of monitoring. Not even close. The funding isn't there. The infrastructure isn't there. And the disasters are accelerating. What happened in Niscemi is already being called a sentinel event, a warning shot, because the conditions that led to this collapse, they're not unique. From Greece to Turkey, Morocco to Lebanon, the same unstable soils, the same steep topography, and the same underregulated urban sprawl are everywhere. Add climate-amplified rainfall to the mix, and you've got a recipe for more collapses, more neighborhoods lost to landslides that no one sees coming until the ground splits. Urban development in these areas didn't account for this. Niscemi expanded up its hillsides without comprehensive geotechnical assessments. There were no updated land use rules to account for slope instability. It's not that people ignored the risks, they just didn't see them. Because without rain, the land looks fine. Until it doesn't. And now, engineering solutions are running into a wall. When deep clay slopes mobilize, you can't just patch things up. The usual tricks like tunnels to drain water, anchors to stabilize slopes, or concrete reinforcements don't work here. They're either physically ineffective or economically impossible. In many cases, the only real option is retreat, permanent relocation, abandonment. Not exactly the kind of adaptation people like to hear about, but the only one left when the ground won't stop shifting. What makes this all so surreal is how slow and quiet it is. There's no dramatic footage of buildings tumbling in real time. No viral clips of streets being swallowed instantly. Just the steady unraveling of a town. A home here, a road there, power lines dangling, fissures widening, and families watching the footage from shelters, knowing their homes are never coming back. So, where does this leave us? With a massive wake-up call. The systems we've built to predict, prevent, and respond to natural hazards weren't designed for this new climate-driven reality. When rainfall becomes a geological trigger, when water does the damage we used to fear from earthquakes, we need a new playbook. One that brings together atmospheric science, geotechnical engineering, and land use planning. One that assumes the next storm might not just flood the streets, but take the ground with it. Niscemi didn't collapse because of a tectonic shift. It collapsed because the climate did. And it's not the last town that will. If you're watching this and thinking, this can't keep happening, you're not alone. Thousands are displaced, their homes literally sliding off the map, and still most places don't have a plan for when the hills start to move. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on how cities should prepare for disasters like this, and if you're new here, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who still thinks climate change is just about temperature. This is what it looks like when the Earth fights back. And here's the kicker: this isn't just a local disaster. Niscemi isn't some isolated village hit by a freak incident. It's the front line of a larger pattern. What we're witnessing is a textbook case of what happens when outdated infrastructure, vulnerable geology, and supercharged climate events collide. And not enough people are talking about it. Because let's be real, we've all been trained to associate geological disasters with earthquakes. Ground splits open. Must be seismic. Whole street collapses. Probably tectonic. But Niscemi flipped that script. The seismographs didn't even twitch. This wasn't seismic, it was hydrological. That's what makes it even more unnerving. It's not about plates shifting beneath us anymore. It's about the rain. Not just more rain, but different rain. Longer, heavier, more intense. The kind that overwhelms natural drainage systems and turns every slope into a potential landslide zone. Scientists are calling this a new geological paradigm where atmospheric chaos directly triggers Earth movement. And if that sounds like something out of a climate thriller, welcome to 2026. Now, let's talk about the town itself, Niscemi. Perched on the kind of terrain that looks great on postcards but reads like a red flag in any geology textbook. Pleistocene marine clays, marls, calcarenites, soft layers stacked like a soggy tiramisu. Gorgeous to look at, terrible to build on. These materials aren't just weak, they're deceptively weak. Dry, they seem stable. Wet, they collapse like bad scaffolding. And here's the nightmare scenario. This wasn't a sudden event. It was slow, creeping, unfolding over weeks. That's what makes deep-seated landslides so brutal. They don't knock on the door and scream emergency. They slowly pull the floor out from under you while everyone argues about whether it's safe yet, which also complicates everything from evacuation timing to insurance claims. When is it really unsafe? When the first crack appears, when the house leans a little, when the ground moves an inch, and by the time it's undeniable, it's usually too late. That's exactly why this type of disaster is so hard to manage. Unlike sudden events where response teams swoop in and the damage is obvious, this kind of ground failure drags on. The land keeps shifting. Roads buckle in slow motion. Structures degrade over time, not instantly. So every decision is made in this eerie limbo of still moving, still dangerous. And that brings us to monitoring. The only reason authorities could even react as quickly as they did is because they've ramped up their tech game. Multi-sensor arrays, real-time GPS, drone photogrammetry, high-res rain gauges, basically, the whole high-tech toolkit. It's how they spotted the slope movement early and started evacuations before the worst hit. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most towns don't have access to this level of monitoring. It's expensive, labor-intensive, and requires coordination across multiple agencies. And if you're a small hillside town somewhere in the Mediterranean without big city funding, you're rolling the dice every rainy season. And let's not ignore how much of this ties back to planning or the lack of it. Niscemi, like so many places, expanded up the hillside without ever updating its geotechnical zoning. That's not a scandal. That's reality. Municipal budgets are stretched thin, and long-term geological risk doesn't get votes. But now, the consequences are real. People built homes on land that was only stable under a narrow range of conditions, and that range just got blown out of the water by climate extremes. It's easy to say, why didn't they plan better? But this isn't about blaming homeowners or local councils. It's about recognizing a pattern that's playing out everywhere. Hillside developments all over southern Europe are sitting on the same type of fragile, saturated terrain, and they were all built under old assumptions. Assumptions about rainfall, about soil stability, about how often disasters actually happen. All of that's changing, and when those assumptions collapse, literally what's left? Well, for Niscemi, a whole lot of exposed cliffside. Streets that now lead to nowhere. Utility lines swinging like loose threads. And families who've lost everything except what they carried out in a rush. Engineers have been blunt. There's no easy fix here. Once clay-rich slopes have undergone deep mobilization, you can't just reinforce them. You're not dealing with surface erosion. You're dealing with the wholesale restructuring of the land's internal architecture. The stress fields have changed. The water flow paths are rerouted. Even if the movement stops for now, the slope's been fundamentally altered. It's primed for reactivation the next time heavy rain hits. And that leaves us with one of the toughest conversations in disaster recovery: managed retreat. In plain terms, some of these homes will never be habitable again. Stabilizing the slope would cost more than rebuilding the entire neighborhood somewhere else. So now, it's not about how to fix it. It's about how to leave it. How to help families rebuild their lives not where they once lived, but somewhere new. Somewhere safer. It's a deeply emotional shift. This isn't just a house lost to a fire or a flood. This is the ground itself deciding it's done supporting you. There's no repair, no insurance payout that brings it back. Just an open-ended question. Where do we go now? And it's a question a lot more communities need to start asking. Because what happened in Niscemi is part of a larger Mediterranean pattern. Fragile hillsides, outdated urban planning, and climate-intensified storms. The same conditions exist in parts of Greece, in coastal Turkey, across North Africa. And every time another mega rainstorm hits, another slope could start to slide. Which brings us to the bigger picture: transnational risk. Landslides like this don't respect borders. And the vulnerabilities aren't unique to one country. That's why experts are now pushing for harmonized monitoring standards across the EU. Shared protocols. Joint funding. Because if one town has early warning and the next doesn't, that's not resilience, that's roulette. This isn't a local crisis. It's a regional one. And it's going to keep happening. So where do we go from here? First, we stop pretending these are isolated incidents. Niscemi wasn't unlucky. It was unprepared for a new kind of normal. And unless funding, planning, and monitoring catch up to the pace of climate change, more towns will find themselves dangling over literal edges. Second, we rethink development. Building into unstable terrain needs more than permits, it needs real geotechnical foresight. You can't just pave over risk and call it a community. And you definitely can't build yesterday's neighborhoods in tomorrow's disaster zones. And finally, acknowledge the emotional toll. These aren't just geological events. They're human ones. Displacement isn't just physical, it's psychological. Watching your home tilt, Your street collapse, your foundation vanish beneath your feet. It's the kind of trauma that doesn't go away just because the ground stops moving. So yes, the earth is shifting, but so is the way we need to think about it. We're not just living through weather anymore. We're living through a reshaping of the land itself, 1 millimeter at a time. And if you think this is just a freak event, something that'll blow over once the media cycle moves on, think again. Niscemi is the headline now, but it's also the blueprint for what's coming next. The ground didn't crack because of bad luck. It cracked because the system itself is cracking under the weight of old infrastructure, new weather, and a climate no one's fully prepared for. Let's zoom in one last time on the aftermath. Families who've lived in their homes for generations are now camped out in temporary shelters, watching drone footage of their neighborhoods disintegrating. Kids are out of school indefinitely. Water systems are fractured. Transit is paralyzed. These aren't just inconveniences, they're the start of a long, grueling rebuild that might not even happen in the same place. And remember, even though the slopes movement has slowed, it's not done. That's the most chilling part of all this. The danger isn't over because it never exploded in the first place. This isn't a single moment of impact, it's a drawn-out unraveling. The kind that leaves you checking for new cracks every morning. The kind that forces people to live in a permanent state of wait and see. And now the big question, what's the future of Niscemi? No one can say for sure. Engineering reports suggest that for some areas, the damage is irreversible. Not because of a lack of will, but because the ground just won't hold anymore. When clay-based slopes lose cohesion, they don't magically heal. They stay weak, stay unstable, and stay dangerous. So what happens when you can't rebuild where you once lived? That's the conversation unfolding right now, and it's not just about logistics. It's about identity, community, memory, all tied to a physical place that's no longer safe to stand on. This is where disaster recovery meets existential crisis. And this is why Niscemi matters. Because it's not just a town on a hill. It's a warning etched into the landscape. A slow landslide dragging an entire community into uncertainty, reminding the rest of us that the ground is never as solid as it seems. If this shook you, share this video. Get people talking. And drop your thoughts below. Should more governments be forcing early evacuations in landslide-prone regions? Should we be building elsewhere entirely? And if you want to keep up with the real stories behind climate-driven disasters minus the sugarcoating, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Because the next collapse might already be creeping towards someone else's front door. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it all the way to the end, you're officially part of the small percentage of people who don't just click away, and that means a lot. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts, your ideas, or even what you'd like to see next. I read every single one of them, and your feedback genuinely shapes the direction of this channel. If you enjoyed the video, tap that like button. It tells YouTube this content is worth sharing. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next upload. We've got more exciting videos coming, and trust me, you'll want to be here for them. This channel is just getting started, and your support helps it grow faster than you realize. Thank you again for spending a part of your day here with me. Stay curious, stay motivated, and as always, take care of yourself. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.